Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the show. I'm so happy to be here today. Once again, it's a new day and on control or be controlled. I've missed you guys so much. Uh, this podcast, as you all know, is designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And as always, I remain your very host, your humble host, Darlington. Today's guest is Mistress Malisandre, an author, artist, and former professional dominatrix, whose work explores the deeper conversations around power, consent, intimacy, identity, and personal transformation. Malisandre, welcome to Control or Be Controlled.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
All right, so I would also like you to introduce yourself briefly to my listeners.
Yes. Hello. I am Malisandre. I am a former dominatrix, though I do say that once you're a dominatrix, you kind of always embody that. But currently, I'm an author, artist, as you said. I mostly work with women who are looking to find power, as well as couples. I coach on how to bring power dynamics safely into their own lives.
All right, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I have some questions here for you, and I would like us to get into them.
I'm all ears.
Okay, so when people hear, for my listeners, most of them are hearing the word power dynamics for the very first time. And most people often think only about relationships involving kink or sexuality. Tell us, how do power dynamics actually show up in everyday relationships?
Sure. So power dynamics itself show up not only in our relationships at home, they show up in our relationships with the greater world, in our work, in even sometimes how our countries are led. Those are all levels of power dynamics. Power dynamics refers to the ebb and flow of power as it, operates in our everyday life. That is to say, you have a leader and you have a follower. The power that we're talking about within power dynamics is equated most with giving the trust from the follower to the leader to do so. So, power dynamics does not work without both parties. You can't be a leader without a follower, and you cannot follow without having somebody you're willing to give that trust into. So in our everyday lives, you'll see people who are willingly handing over their trust to individuals. It could be a wife to her husband. It could be children to their parent. It could be in a company that is run by a CEO. Their employees are handing their trust into the CEO to lead this company in a direction that will give them security in their employment. So when we see power dynamics, it's not just in the bedroom, it is all around us. And learning how to see them, how to take advantage of them, how to enter into them safely, consensually, without losing your own power is often what I'm teaching others.
All right, thank you so much, Malisandro. I think I'm learning French just by pronouncing your name. Okay, so consent is often misunderstood. What does healthy, ethical consent truly look like when power, vulnerability, or strong emotions are involved?
Absolutely. It's a great question. Ethical consent is referring to an unequivocal yes. So ethical consent is not a maybe. It's most certainly not a no. If it's not an emphatic yes, if it's not a yes, 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 repeated yes, then it's a no. Anything that requires manipulation, that requires you badgering another person, that is not ethical consent. Consent is an emphatic affirmation of desire. And that could be in the bedroom, that could be out in public. I'm sure we've all seen it when you've seen somebody, badgering a friend into doing something they don't necessarily want to do. Come with me. Come on, let's go. I don't know, maybe. Come on, no, come on. I want you to come. Let's go. Let's do this. That is actually not ethical consent. That's manipulative. An ethical consent would be you ask your friend, hey, do you want to come with me to this new bookstore? And your friend looks at you dead in the eye and says, hell yes, I want to go. Let's get in the car now. That's an emphatic yes. And another thing with ethical consent is that yes, that emphatic yes can turn into a no at any time. And that has to be respected. Any yes can turn into a no immediately, and you stop. You stop your action, whatever it is. So when we're talking about consent, the reason that ethical has been added to the vocabulary is because not all consent is created equally.
Okay, thank you so much for breaking down ethical consent. So through your work, Malisandro, with individuals and couples, tell us what you have learned about communication that most people struggle to understand.
Excuse me. So the thing that I will say that I have found when working with couples is communication is often one-sided. You oftentimes, and this is anecdotally, oftentimes inadvertently, you have a leader and a follower in a relationship. You have somebody who does a good proportion of the communication, and you have somebody that just says, okay, and goes along with the flow. And I find that one of the most interesting aspects of communication when I'm working with couples is teaching those who predominantly communicate how to listen, and to teach the other who predominantly listens how to identify their desire and communicate that desire with their partner without fear, without judgment, or without shame. Even within couples who have been married for years, who have been partnered for years, oftentimes there is a breakdown in communication, and it sometimes just needs somebody who's willing to shine the light on it to bring it into the day.
Okay, so moving on. Tell us how boundaries create healthier relationships, and why do so many people struggle with setting or respecting them?
That's a great question. Boundaries are something that take, and I will speak from my work solely. I can't speak for everyone, but in my work, both as a dominatrix and as somebody who's currently educating people on power and boundaries and limits, I find that women have a hard time of setting a boundary firmly and not moving it, because especially in Western culture, women have been taught to be amenable. So we have been taught to always be the hostess, always be willing to negotiate, always be willing to accept like their own uncomfortability in exchange for somebody else's desire, somebody else's feelings, somebody else's comfort level. So in teaching, boundaries to anyone, what it does is helps you identify within yourself your safety lines, I like to call them, and to feel empowered to stand behind them and to not feel that that piece is something that you have to give up. That power is not something that you have to negotiate with. Negotiation within any relationship is something that does occur, especially when it comes to limits and boundaries. Limits and boundaries are a living, breathing thing. What is a limit one day may change. What is something that's allowable one day, the very next day could no longer feel safe, and that becomes a limit and boundary. So in teaching people power dynamics, communication within these types of relationships, one thing that I'm truly doing is teaching people how to set boundaries, stand in their power behind the boundary, and to remember that those particular levels of, acceptance doesn't come from their ability to manipulate those. They do not have to move those to be loved.
All right. So your work involves exploring identity and self-expression. How can people reconnect with who they truly are after trauma, difficult relationships, or major life changes?
So finding yourself, especially after something that has been traumatic, it could be a traumatic experience. It could be something as simple as I've been fired from my job. Finding yourself oftentimes means stripping away what you have learned you are to be. So for women especially, it is sometimes stripping away the fact that you have to be all of these things to be considered a woman of value. You have to be fit, you have to be beautiful, you have to be young, you have to be soft, you have to be kind, you have to be want to be a mother, you have to be maternal, you have to support other women, you have to make sure that everything is done a certain way. You have to, so all of these demands that are being put on you from society, especially, and I can speak primarily to Western culture, but it's reminding people that after something like that, all of those building blocks of who you are shaken up. So helping people remember their power and to shake those expectations loose is often what I'm referring to when I talk about helping people find their identity. It's shaking all of those perceptions loose to see what's left. What's left. I oftentimes think back to when you are a young person, when you are little, when you are a child, you oftentimes know exactly who you are. You ask a 7-year-old, who are you? What are you going to be when you grow up? And they will answer with things like, I want to be an artist. I want to be a princess. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a dad. I want to be a mother. People often know who their true essence is before society has kind of foisted certain labels upon them. So after an experience that can be traumatic, all of those things are shaken loose, and it's a prime opportunity to remember the power that's always there, and remember who you are. Remember who you are that little 6-year-old child knew. You know who you are.
Okay. Thank you so much, Malisandre. So, what have you learned about trust, both trusting others and trusting ourselves? Are you there?
I am here.
So I said, what have you learned about trust, both trusting others and trusting ourselves?
So I've learned through my work that trust is something that is obviously earned, but it's also something that's freely given. So sometimes we look at society and we look at these roles, these power dynamics, and we say, you have to earn somebody's trust. You have to prove you're worth trusting. When oftentimes the true power lies within someone to give trust to someone else. It's often a gift. It's not something you receive. And when we look at it from that lens, it tends to really shift how we view a leader and how we view a follower. Follower tends to have a negative connotation in most societal views. It signifies, lack of originality. It signifies, certain levels of, lack of power, when in reality, through my work, what I've learned is the person who is following, who is gifting trust, holds power more often than not. And those who are really secure in that form of identity, in that form of themselves, in that submission, in that identity, they feel that. They feel empowered when they gift their trust to a leader. So that's something that probably few people talk about or learn from power dynamics when it comes to trust. But that has been the lesson that I've taken from it.
Okay, thank you so much. So, why do conversations around desire, intimacy, and personal agency make so many people uncomfortable?
Oh gosh. I think that it makes people uncomfortable because, they're holding up a mirror to themselves. They're holding up a mirror when they're having that conversation, and that mirror can sometimes reflect back their own internal bias, their own internal shame. And so rather than look at themselves truly and deeply, they decide that it's not worth it. It's not worth having the conversation. And that's how taboos are created, right? That's how feelings of discomfort around, intimacy of all kinds. Intimacy doesn't have to mean sex. Intimacy can be a type of conversation. My work as a dominatrix was very intimate, but it did not involve sex. That was not what my practice entailed. Some practices do, but mine did not. The forms of intimacy that I was creating and teaching were based in trust and power and discipline and protocol. So oftentimes people shy away from those conversations to shy
Tell us
away
what
from
misconceptions
revealing
people
a
often
truth
have
about
about your
themselves
past work,
that still
and
brings
what do
them
you wish they
shame.
understood better?
So oftentimes when people start to explore kink, BDSM, that type of dynamic, that type of internal search, what they are actually doing is for the first time taking a look in that mirror and either liking what they see or slowly pulling away the shroud and slowly pulling away the layers of shame so that they can see their true self.
All right. Thank you so much, Alessandro. So, tell us what misconceptions people have about your past work, and what do you wish they understood better?
Oh, that's great. That's a great question. So what I want people to understand about people who my past profession as a dominatrix and those who work in that industry with me, oftentimes they're looking at it as a they look at it as something that is dirty. They look at it as something that is, well, why would people have to pay for that? There's people that will do it for free. And that's true. But people in my industry have gone through rigorous training. There are dominatrix. The role of a dominatrix is actually one that is thousands of years old. It can be traced back to Mesopotamia. So instead of being a service, a dynamic, a profession that is elevated because of its age, elevated because of its spiritual status, it has been relegated to something that is shameful. And I want to bring into the light that the women that I have worked with in this industry that do what I did and do what I do are some of the most enlightened people on the planet. These people have honed their skills and honed their craft to be able to hold space for people that need help freeing from their own chains of insecurity, their own chains of shame. So when you think about people who participate as a dominatrix professionally, who work in that type of industry, know that what they're doing is not necessarily about sex and spankings and, hooking and like bondage and all of that. That's there, but that's a tool. What they're actually doing is creating and holding space for somebody who feels shame and needs freedom. They're holding a space and looking at somebody and saying, see this part of you that you hate, this part of you that you are ashamed of. I think it's beautiful. I want to see more of it. So go into it with an open heart and not one of judgment.
All right. Thank you so much, Alessandro. For someone or one of my listeners out there listening right now who feels disconnected from themselves or afraid to embrace who they are, what is the first step towards reclaiming their confidence and identity?
I'm a big believer in personal ritual. And personal ritual could mean anything. It could mean getting up in the morning. And this is the one I usually tell everybody to start with. You get up in the morning, do not look at your phone. Don't look at your phone. Wake up. Go make your coffee or your tea. As you're stirring your coffee or your tea with a spoon, you think to yourself, I lay flowers at the versions of myself that I once was. I lay flowers at their feet. I embrace who I am today and know that I'm here to make a difference. I'm here as a gift. And I look forward to meeting who I am tomorrow. Acknowledging the versions of yourself that are always in existence. Who you were, you pay homage to it. Who you are today and what you intend to bring to this day. And what the future might hold for you. What that does is kind of brings yourself into alignment. That you're here for a purpose. Everyone's here for a purpose. There's no accidents here. So bringing that little piece of ritual into your life can often bring you more power than it sounds like. But just acknowledging that the chances of you being here, little piece of stardust that you are inside your meat suit on a flying rock in space, is astronomical. So giving thanks to that and knowing that you're here as part of something bigger.
All right. Once again, thank you for joining us and sharing such an honest conversation about power, consent, identity, and personal transformation. Today's discussion reminds us that understanding ourselves begins with honesty, understanding our boundaries, communicating clearly, and recognizing the importance of trust and respect in every relationship. So for those who would like to learn more about your work, explore your books, art, and your creative projects, how can they do that?
I'm assuming that you'll be putting my link tree in your show notes. That has all ways to get in touch with me and to explore my work.
All right. So I would like you to send that to me on Podmatch, so I will add that to the show notes.
Sure.
Okay. So thank you once again, and thanks to all my listeners for tuning in today for this very special episode. And do have a wonderful day ahead.